Welcome to Encounters with Ableism. I'm your host, Shawn Marsolais. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. If you need captioning, you can enable that yourselves. So I just want to start by acknowledging that Blind Beginnings is on the unceded traditional territory of the Kaikait First Nation, and we are so grateful to be able to carry out our programs across all the Indigenous nations throughout what we now call British Columbia. Tonight, we have a panel of 4 adults who are blind and partially sighted who are going to share their encounters of ableism, and I will have them introduce themselves shortly. I should, introduce myself. So I'm Shawn Marsolais. I'm the founder of Blind Beginnings and the director of programs and community engagement at Blind Beginnings. I grew up with a visual impairment myself. I was diagnosed when I was 5 years old with retinitis pigmentosa, which is a degenerative eye condition, and pretty much lost the ability to really have any functional vision by the time I was 18. So have lived with a visual impairment for over 4 decades. Lots of lived experience, and I'm really excited for this topic tonight. October is Blindness Awareness Month, which is why we're talking about encounters with ableism. And it's probably important that we start by defining what ableism is. So ableism is the discrimination and social prejudice against people with disabilities based on the belief that typical abilities are superior. Ableism is rooted in the assumption that disabled people require fixing and defines people by their disability. It is often referred to as the forgottenism. Ableism classifies people with disabilities as less than and includes harmful stereotypes and misconceptions. If you're still a bit confused, stick around because we're going to share examples with you. So before we get into that, though, let's introduce our panelists. Jill.
Excuse me. Hi, so I'm Jill. I'm living in Burnaby, but I'm originally from northern BC. And I have an eye condition called retinopathy of prematurity, relating to being 3 months premature. So I've always been fully blind in my left eye and was low vision in my right eye. And then, due to kind of prolonged complications of the condition, I lost my remaining sight when I was 15. So now I'm 28, so I've experienced both low vision and fully blind for a few years now. And a little bit about me, I actually tomorrow I am graduating with my master's in book publishing from SFU or Simon Fraser University. And I have a really cute little black lab seeing eye dog named Kiki. So that's a bit about me.
Thanks, Jill, and congratulations
Thank
for
you.
tomorrow. All right, next up, Acacia.
Hi, so I'm Acacia. I'm a second year writing student. So I have ocular cutaneous albinism. So my vision's like 20 over 200, and I have trouble seeing distance, detail, especially when there's like low contrast or a bunch of glare. Uh, yeah.
Great, thank you. And Keisha.
Hello, my name is Keisha. I work at Blind Beginnings as the program memberships coordinator after graduating with my degree in tourism management. And I have retinitis pigmentosa, and I currently have basically just a bit light perception with what I like to call a few added bonuses of seeing some colors and shapes when my eyeballs allow. And yeah, and a little bit about me. I was a cane user for a lot of years. I work with a guide dog now, although when he is in a mood where he doesn't feel like working, I will also use my cane. And I am based out of Kamloops.
Awesome. And finally, Ishita.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ishita. I am based out of Surrey, BC. I have a condition called cone-rod dystrophy, which leaves me with partial sight. So this condition primarily affects my central field of vision. I can see general details and colors pretty well, but have issues when it comes to more finer details. A little bit about myself. I am a fourth year student studying psychology and education at SFU as well. hoping to graduate next year, and am a mobility cane user.
Okay. So each panelist, excuse me, is going to share their story of ableism. And after each story, I will summarize what I feel are the ableist points in the story in case that doesn't come across clearly. Once we've gone through each of the panelists and their ableism stories, then we will open it up to questions. So, but you can type your questions in the Q&A at any time while we're speaking, and we will just be compiling all of those and asking questions at the end. Okay, so Jill, are you ready?
Yeah. Okay, so my ableism story starts, or happened, I guess, back in high school. So, specifically grade 11 social studies. I was around 16 at the time. So I was still pretty new to being fully blind. Like I had mentioned, I was low vision, and then lost my remaining sight when I was 15. So like roughly a year into being fully blind. And that definitely comes with a lot of learning curves and, had to learn how to use assistive technology more so, how to use a mobility cane, and just overall just, adjusting from decent sight to literally nothing. Um, so I was still like pretty new, like I said, and I was a little hesitant because I just wasn't sure how people would react. And also from being in northern BC at the time, I grew up in a really small town. So I was, I believe, the only visually impaired student in the whole high school. So I was already kind of stood out quite a bit. But in this specific situation, in the social studies class, for about the week, we were watching a movie during class. Can't remember what it's about, doesn't matter. But what had happened is I had a support staff or an education assistant kind of describing the more visual parts of the movie, and typical high school kids will kind of whisper and chat while the movie's playing, because we do. And the teacher kept just saying like, everyone shush, shush, be quiet so Jill can hear. And he did it multiple times throughout the week. And it just got like, he pointed it out so blatantly and so obvious. And like all my classmates already knew that I couldn't see, that I was visually impaired. So like it's not like anybody knew, and I didn't need him to say that. Like he pointed me out and made me stand out even more than I already did. And I felt really uncomfortable and embarrassed about that. And I even had tried speaking up a little bit at one of these days, saying that I'm blind, not deaf, which my classmates found funny, and so did I. But the teacher did not clue in at all to what was going on. And my mom, like when I would go home after school, she just kind of knew something was bothering me and asked me what's going on. So I explained the situation, and my mom's pretty feisty and pretty blunt. So she just told me to stand up for myself and confront him. And again, like being kind of new to the blind or fully blind world, I didn't really know how to approach those kind of situations of being treated differently or made to stand out like that. Um, and I just, I didn't want to disrespect the teacher or make it a big deal. I didn't want to stand out any more than I already had. No thanks to the teacher. But later that week, or I think the next week, we were having my IEP, which I believe stands for Individual Education Plan. And in these meetings, like my mom was there, my teachers, the special ed teacher, my vision teacher. So a whole group of us just going over how the year was going so far. And I was encouraged by everyone there to speak up and talk to this teacher during the meeting and tell him kind of how I felt about him calling me out like that. And I was super nervous to do that because, again, like I'd never really had to deal with this situation before. And I was a lot more shy back then. But I wanted to suck it up and just confront him because I was so frustrated about it. Um, and then as soon as I did, he instantly felt so bad and was like shocked and surprised with himself because he didn't even realize he was doing it. And I find that's a really common thing with ableism in general, is they don't always really realize they're doing it. So when I told him that it was bothering me and I didn't appreciate it, I didn't like it, made me feel embarrassed, etc. He was very apologetic and he never did it again, which is great. So he definitely took that situation and, tried to make it better moving forward. So yeah, that's my story.
Oh, good for you for confronting it. That must have been pretty intimidating as a
Yeah.
high school student.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So, what I hear or what I see as ableism in that situation is the teacher speaking on your behalf, assuming that he knew what you needed or
Mhm.
wanted, which is a common thing that happens, I think.
Yeah.
This kind of assumes that Jill wasn't capable to speak up for herself and that he knows better than her what her needs are.
Mhm.
And then the other part, providing help that Jill didn't want and singling her out and drawing attention, unwanted attention to her disability, which I think as a high school student is probably the worst part of it. I don't know. I definitely felt that when I was in high school. Please do not out me
Mhm.
in any way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Jill. Okay. Let's move on to Acacia.
Okay. Um, so my story is work related. So it was like this was like the third job that I'd had, but like um this it was the first job I'd had that like I had like like a whole bunch of responsibilities, and a bunch of my coworkers were like adults, and it was full like 8.5 hour shifts. So like even though like I'd like worked before that, like I felt pretty new when I was starting this job. And so basically it was in a grocery store, and they started everyone doing grocery, which is like stocking all the items and facing aisles, and then doing the cash register. And then like, if they did well, then they got put in departments. And at first they told me that was what they were going to do. But then on my schedule, they just put me in a department right away, which like first of all, like I was grateful for it because like that's where everyone wants to be. But like I definitely felt bad right off the bat, because like it's sort of like a rite of passage to like do the cash register and the like not so fun jobs. And like I just felt bad like because like I was taking another employee's spot when like I hadn't earned it and stuff, but also just that like I actually really wanted to do cash and I really wanted to get cash experience, but they just like didn't give me the chance to do it. And like and I should have talked to them. And I should have approached them about it because like otherwise they've been really, really good about making accommodations. Like, I'd had a chat at the start and they're like, yeah, like just kind of tell us what you need, tell us what works for you. And they were really good about it. So if I'd like had a good conversation with them about it, they probably would have put me on cash, but they probably would have given me a chance if I just said like, like it might take me a little longer at first, but if you just give me a chance to prove myself. But first of all, I was just like so worried that they were gonna think that I was ungrateful for like giving me the job in the first place because it had been pretty hard to find someone who would like even, give me that chance. Or that I was ungrateful for like the other stuff that they were doing, or that they'd give me the chance and then I'd be too slow at it or something and like prove them right. And then I'd be like doing some huge disfavor to people with like disabilities everywhere. I don't know. So I just kind of never talked to them about it. And like this one time I accidentally got scheduled to do cash. So I just asked the manager about it and like he just kind of like laughed and was like, oh, like imagine you doing cash. And like I know he was like, just meant to be laughing with me and it was just a passing thing, but like it felt really, really bad. Um, and it just like, I was like, oh well, yeah, I guess they're not gonna give me a chance. So I took like, those couple things and made it into this whole thing that I really, I don't think it was that like there was definitely like there was initially, but yeah, if I could do it again, I definitely would have had that conversation, because like then I came away from that job and I still didn't have cash experience. And that was not a thing that needed to be like that, I don't think. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I totally
Oh,
understand.
and one other thing, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just forgot to mention, the department they put me in because well, partly I think because they'd had another visually impaired person work there in the past, which totally, I mean, it makes sense, but like when they explained it to me, like our situations were not the same at all. So like, they were definitely just like trying to do the right thing, but like, again, like I never really had that conversation and said like, hey, these things might not be the same, even though like everyone there was honestly really nice and like they totally would have listened if I had that conversation. So yeah.
Yeah. So if they're very strong in their sort of assumptions about your capabilities, it's harder, excuse me, to then tell people or ask people or even ask for what you need, because they seem to already know, because they're assuming your needs are the same as the last visually impaired person they knew. That sounds very frustrating. So again, there's an assumption of Acacia's limits, assuming she wouldn't possibly be able to do cash without asking her if she thinks that she would be able to do cash. And then putting Acacia in the position that the previous visually impaired person did, because all visually impaired people are the same and therefore would have the same needs and abilities. And then I feel like the offering a position that others envied, that she didn't earn herself, would create division between her and her coworkers. So it would make people feel maybe envious and not understand why this new person gets to do this job that they want to be doing. And sometimes when we get accommodations, people are envious of us and don't understand that it's an accommodation and it's not a perk or a special privilege. But in this case, it wasn't even something that Acacia had asked for. So there's kind of a lot of problems with that. Thanks, Acacia. Okay, moving on to Keisha. Keisha, very similar but different.
Yeah, so my story is a little bit is a sporty story. So I'm a very outdoorsy person. In my spare time, I like to be out doing, all sorts of outdoorsy pursuits, paddling, multi-day hiking, skiing, etc., etc. And so when I finished my degree, and I was, getting ready to start working and whatnot. And my friends were kind of all moving away, doing different whatever pursuits, careers, etc. And I thought, instead of sitting here and being lonely, why don't I try to find a group to do outdoors sports with, and maybe make new friends and kindred spirits and etc. So I remember doing some research in my community and finding a few different groups that do, hiking and stuff like that. And I thought, oh, awesome! Like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. And so I remember reaching out to one of the groups, and I basically said, I'm really interested in joining. I'd love to come out on some hikes, yeah, and all that sort of thing. And I did explain in that initial intro email that I was visually impaired, just to get that right off the table, because often, it can cause some questions or just some discomfort. So I just really wanted to address it quickly and be like, it's no big thing, but this is the deal. And yeah. And so I did receive a response from the leader of the group I would, and they basically said, we are uncomfortable, like, I'm paraphrasing here, of course, but they basically said, we're uncomfortable with allowing you into the group. We think that, due to your disability, some of these hikes are like out of your range, and we just don't feel comfortable allowing you in, essentially. And keep in mind, like, I have basically, not to toot my horn, no, but I have hiked like a lot of the hikes in Kamloops, so much so that sometimes I'm like, where is a new hike that I haven't hiked or in this area? And so I've hiked considerably more challenging routes than even a lot of the ones that I saw posted on the social media of the group I was looking at. And I've done multi-days, I've done really crazy elevation I really felt that I was totally capable. I've come up with a lot of different adaptations for myself, and basically, you know, if I have someone to follow who can navigate, I'm good for the rest of the stuff. I can totally make my way. And so so them saying this, of course, got me all in a heated state of frustration. And so but I did write them an email back and basically explained everything I just said to you as eloquently as I could, and just saying, like, I really feel that I am quite able to do this, actually, and here's my experience level. And, you know, basically just explaining, like, yes, like, there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to do this. I would not be a liability, and like I and you know, anybody who goes out and does high impact or outdoor adventure sports, like, you're always at a little bit at risk of hurting yourself, sighted, blind, etc. So, you know, you take that accountability onto yourself. And I just was like, this would have been a great opportunity to make friends and meet new people. But then I sent that email to educate this person, because I just felt like it was just there was a wrongful assumption, in my opinion. And but that being said, like, even after I did that, I decided, like, you know, that kind of mindset is not probably the people that I want to be spending my time with anyway. In my spare time, I don't know, like, if that's what the group leader is like. I don't know what the participants are like, so I don't really know if this is actually necessarily a. I'm not bashing on the group at all. I'm sure that they're probably great, but I just was like, maybe this isn't the place for me. I'm seeking acceptance and a relaxing and fun time with like-minded individuals. So, you know, I'm sure I can find it elsewhere.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
This one gets me really riled up. Well, they all do, but I think the making assumptions about your limitations without asking, and then not willing to listen or consider your past experience, like the fact that even like I can like give a little bit of a pass to the initial, oh, I don't know how you're going to do this. That's kind of common, that sighted folks don't understand how somebody who's blind could do something that they can't imagine doing themselves. But to, after you explain all the things, all your experience, all the hikes you've done, and they still are just like, no, I don't think so.
Well, I think they were a little bit more lenient, like a little bit more open, but it was just like still like an uncomfortable enough situation that I was like, nah. Yeah. Yeah. And it wasn't like I would have loved would have been, okay, you know what? We were wrong to make this assumption. So, you know, let's give you a chance.
Yeah, no chance. This belief that that you're not going to be able to do it as well as everyone else, or maybe you're going to slow everyone down, or maybe you're going to cause danger to other people, or I'm sure there were all sorts of misconceptions that they were assuming incorrectly. I have a question for you later, but we have to save questions to the end. So awesome. Thanks, Keisha. Okay, Ishita.
All right. So my incident takes place back in 2021. I believe it was like around December. And I was 21 at the time. So I had to get referred for some dental related work by my dentist to a specialist. So she had referred me, and I was on my way to the dental office. Actually, before that, I had called them because I have a habit of just checking in with providers if it's a new doctor, to just let them know that I'm visually impaired and I'm going to probably need some assistance with filling out forms. So I offer to either have them send it to me prior to the meeting, or just ask if someone could be there to help kind of help me work through that form. So I had let them know about that, and they had said that they can't send it prior to the meeting because some privacy related stuff. So I said, okay, would it be okay if someone is there to kind of work, help me work through the form? And they said, yeah, no worries. So I said, okay. So I go there, and when I get there to the office, they're just like, we are too busy. We can't help you. So I said, okay, could I have it emailed to me? Because I do have my phone on me. So that way I can at least work through the form and try to kind of just figure out what we could do there. And they said no, kind of same privacy related stuff. So I said, they asked if I had someone with me who could help me with the form. I did have my dad who took me that day because there was quite a bit of snow on the ground and transit wasn't working well. So he came in and he kind of helped me go through the form and he went back into the car. So I could proceed with the consultation. So after that was completed, they called me in for some scans. And a lot of dental office have some like pretty overhead scans where you kind of have to stand in and then they kind of go around your head. I kind of misjudged where it was and I walked right into one. I'm also relatively tall. So the dental hygienist felt really bad. And I said it was okay because it was an honest mistake. And I just continued with the kind of meeting with the doctor stuff, which is all the scans and kind of going through what needs to be done. And then once I completed that, I sat in the chair and waited for the doctor to show up. And when he did, the first thing he said was, is anyone here with you? And I said, no, it's just me here today. And he's like, can you call someone? And I said, why? And he said, so I can explain what treatment needs to be done. And I'm like, I had assumed that maybe he thought I was a minor. So I said, I'm 21. I'm good to make the decisions. And he said, well, I need to show you the scans and you can't see it. And I said, well, if you're going to be describing the treatment, even a sighted person won't be able to like interpret the scans because it's just anatomy scans of the teeth. So I'm like, you're going to need to explain the treatment anyways, and I'm going to make the final decision. So no. So I really had to hunker down on the fact that I was the only one there and no one will be making the decision for me. So he finally agreed and walked me through the treatment and gave his suggestion, and I obviously went with his suggestion. And he told me that after this consultation, I can schedule another meeting and we can move forward with the actual treatment. So I was like, okay. I was already feeling quite frustrated that I needed to explain that I will be making the decision for my own treatment. And that exchange about like kind of requiring someone with me, that took like, I would say at least maybe 5 minutes. So that took like time away from the actual appointment. I didn't get too much time with him after that to ask questions. He had just left. So I was like, okay. So I just kind of wanted to get through the interaction and then see what I wanted to do after that. So I went to the front desk to schedule my next appointment and to pay for the consultation. And the first thing that the person working there asked me was, so do you want to check in with your dad's schedule when you can come in next? And I said, I don't understand why you're asking me that. And she said, because, well, you need someone to take you. So you should check in with their schedule, see if they can take you. And I said, no, I'm going to schedule on a day that works for me. Now, for anyone else, I don't need assistance getting here because realistically, the appointment will happen when there's not much snow around and I'm going to feel a lot more safer walking in independently. So after that, they kind of didn't believe me until I really had to push again that no, I'm just go with what I am comfortable with doing. Made the appointment, and then they also didn't let me kind of pay independently as well. They didn't assume I could do that myself. So I remember one of them took the card from my hands and kind of did it all the interactions for me. And I was like, no, could you just tell me what you're doing? I just need to select the correct account, and kind of just had to really forcefully get through that interaction as well. And once I finished that, I was feeling very frustrated and didn't really want to continue getting treatment from this person because I was worried about if I needed some things. Personally, through providers, I like to ask questions about what's going to be happening and kind of have them walk me through the process. And I didn't have confidence that this person would be able to do it accessibly. So I went back to my dentist and I asked if I could get a referral to a different doctor. And she said that they're the only one in the area. So it doesn't look like I would be able to get it because with specialists as well, there's going to be a long wait time. So I did feel a little stuck at that point. But what I ended up doing was kind of asking around with some friends and people that I know, seeing if they had anyone else, just to see if I could independently kind of look at people. And someone had directed me to their partner. working in the same building, and they had a really good experience. So I had independently kind of scheduled. I asked my dentist to refer me to them because I think they needed an additional referral process. And I went to her, and she was much more accommodating, much better. I think maybe she had heard that I was quite frustrated because I did call in the office and let them know that I was quite upset, and because they asked me why I was originally with this doctor and why I switched, and I let them know that I wasn't comfortable with the way that that doctor was treating me. And yeah, so went through that treatment, ended up getting my treatment done, and that was a much better experience.
Whew. Wow. I'm so sorry that happened to you.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I hear, first of all, not willing to provide any kind of alternate format accommodations. Like, you were offering solutions to how you could fill out the paperwork, and they were just not willing to bend at all on that. Assuming that because you can't see, you also won't be able to understand his explanation is infuriating. Like, who looks at dental picture things, x-rays, and understands them if they're not a dentist anyways? Like, that's just so bizarre.
Yeah.
Really treating you like a child, assuming that you would need somebody to bring you to the appointment, that you couldn't possibly travel independently or come on your own or make decisions about your appointment, like, or know your own schedule, or just like, so frustrating. Yeah. That's hard.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know if they thought I had like a personal assistant the whole time, kind of scheduling everything for me. But yeah, I really had to push and let them know that no, I can do things independently. And I found myself justifying things a lot. Like, I think it is relatively normal for a sighted person to get a ride when it is snow outside. But I felt like I consistently had to be like, it's just because of the weather. Otherwise, this wouldn't be happening. And that's not something that I needed to do, but the situation really made me feel like I kept having to do that. Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Thank you so much, all of you, for sharing these encounters. This is a chance, again, reminding people, if they want to ask any questions, you can type your questions into the Q&A. We're not using the chat today, but we are using the Q&A. So we'll just give you a chance to ask those questions. But in the meantime, I do have a couple. Okay, so a question to all of you. How do you decide when to call people out and when to just let it go? So Acacia let it go, didn't really speak up. The rest of you did in one way or another. So I guess, how do you decide? And anybody can answer.
Well, this is Keisha here. I'd like to speak to this a little because I kind of did a bit of both. I kind of I did a bit of educating, but in the end, I decided that, like, just with the mindsets, I just didn't want to, like, in this scenario, like, it wasn't a job, it wasn't school, so it wasn't something I was like, needed to clear up right away. It was like I was looking for a social opportunity to meet people and have a fun time. So I immediately, in that scenario, I was like, you know what? If their first thought is no, absolutely, you can't do this with us, then I don't want to socially involve myself with that, because that's just not going to be a fun time. And that's just not going to be like enjoyable at all for me. And in my spare time, I want to have fun. And whereas, like, if it was, I don't know, a work or a school scenario, I probably would have pushed through and just, educated and tried to rectify the situation, because, it's more important to, you have to continue to work and go to school every day, and you don't want those stereotypes or misconceptions to continue perpetuating. So in that scenario, I would have been probably quite a bit more tough on the
Mhm.
people and quite a bit more whatever. But in that scenario with a social situation, I was like, you know what, this just shows to me that you are not the people I want to engage with. And
Yeah.
thankfully I had a choice in that scenario.
Well, and you make a good point in a work situation or even especially work, there's a power imbalance. So if it's your boss that is causing, is being ableist, it's a lot harder to call that person out than just not just, but a recreation activity that you want to
Yeah.
do, a group that you want to join. It's kind of you can find another group maybe, but it's not that easy to just find another job.
Yeah, exactly.
Did anyone else want to speak to that question?
Yeah, it's Jill here. For me, it's a very pick my battles kind of situation for me. Um, but whether or not I speak up. And kind of the ways that I find that I am speaking up versus not is if it's a continuous or repetitive situation, like this teacher who kept calling me out in front of the
Mm-hmm.
class, he did it like pretty much every day for a week, right? So like the first few times, I'm like, oh, okay, it's like kind of embarrassing, but I'll just let it go. Like maybe he'll just do it once and that'll be it. But he kept doing it, and then I just increasingly got more like annoyed about it and embarrassed about it. So I find that when I speak up, it definitely depends on like how often or how much the situation like reoccurs. Like for example, like I take Ubers a lot, and I get denied a lot because of my seeing eye dog. Um, and then so I tend to I'll fight back a bit about that, and if they're really not having it, then I'm like, okay, then I'll report you, and you're being illegal, and moving on.
Mm,
But I also find the for me to speak up or not depends. It, like sounds kind of funny, but depends on my mood. Because if I'm tired or already frustrated or just having a bad day, I I want to into these situations in the best ways I can as being like educational and like representing in a good way like the community and how
mm-hmm.
we're capable and stuff like that. Um, so if I'm like really tired or grouchy or something, I don't I'll just like disengage from the situation because I don't want to be rude or snappy and kind of shed a bad light on um I guess the community, right? So
Yeah, I get that. I think that's a really good point. Thank you.
100%. And to add to that too, um like we all, as people with disabilities, people with visual impairments, like we also have a limited amount of energy, and every day, we not only have these encounters, but like you're dealing with your family, your job, your whatever, and so there's limited amount of energy to be constantly like Jill said,
Educating.
like you really need to pick your fight sometimes just to protect yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and your mental well-being, I think.
For
yeah.
sure. Acacia, Ishita, did you want to respond?
I think one thing I would just like to add, I very much agree with Keisha and Jill here, but yeah, I also in kind of like the case where I was talking about where you're dealing with like a whole system, where you feel stuck and there may not be an alternate, and
Yeah.
you're kind of stuck between choosing in a way, something you really believe in, which is no one based off of disability or anything should be discriminated against, versus getting a very necessary medical treatment. It's very hard to choose, and you can feel isolated a lot of the times. And I was lucky where I did find an alternate, but there's many cases where people can't. And a lot of times there are complaint spaces for healthcare providers, but it's such a long chain that it doesn't go anywhere. So it can feel very exhausting and tiring just dealing with something like this on your own as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like I mean this isn't really like the right answer, but like I find it like way easier to stand up for stuff like that if you're like in school or like somewhere where there's like something to fall back on if people like give you trouble about it. Like there's like accessibility services or there's whatever. Whereas like
Mm-hmm.
say in work, I'm like, yes, like, like legally they have to help me and whatever, but like I don't, have like a ton of like power here. And also like, or say like a couple months ago, a bus driver like totally yelled at me. And I just like didn't say anything because I was like, I have to take this bus every single day. Like, I don't
Right.
want to, you know, start
Yeah.
anything when this dude's probably just having a bad day, even though like I felt pretty horrible about it. And it also like looked kind of bad because I had my cane and whatever, you know, but like,
Wow.
so I think there's like times when you like, yeah, definitely pick your battles or just like sort of assess the situation. And it's like, is this going to be productive or am I just going to yell at someone and it's going to get worse? You know?
Yeah.
Very true.
Acacia, I'm just curious, did your coworkers ever confront you about not having to do cash? Did anyone ever say
Oh,
anything to
no,
you?
no,
Okay.
no. No, they were, I mean, like, yeah, my coworkers were really nice, the people that I like knew. So
Okay. So that
yeah, like
guilt you
it
felt
wasn't,
was your own just feeling bad.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's good. Okay. So this is my question to you, Keisha. Do you, in retrospect, I mean, I think I already know the answer, but do you think that if you had just showed up to the first hike, if you had not disclosed your blindness in the kind of preparing to join this group and were able to just do the hike and they could have seen your abilities, like do you feel like it could have gone better or differently, or what do you think about that?
So this is a thing, this is a tactic in outdoor adventure sports that I employ all the time.
Okay.
And it's for this very reason, because I'm looking at these sports and I'm thinking, you know what? I don't want to miss an opportunity because of a closed mind. Like
Right.
I'm gonna show up and I know I can do it because I've done it a lot. And I'm gonna bring the gear that I need and I'm gonna be there. And I think that like yeah, I think at first they might be like, oh, like unsure how to approach because they would just be like, whoa, like freeze, like uncomfortable. But I think like I would just go as I have done before and just begin the hike and
Mhm.
like uh show that I'm very capable. And I think they would be like, they might not even say anything, which I've seen before where it's like, or they might be like, hey, uh, you're visually impaired, hey? Which I've also seen before, and I'm like, yeah. And they're like, oh, well, that went different than I would have imagined. And it's like, yeah, because you had one idea in your head and it was
Yeah.
incorrect.
Yeah.
So yes,
Yeah.
I think it would have gone differently, but I also didn't want to risk it just in case because it can be very uncomfortable when the person is really uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
and you're just they're like oh yeah, grabbing you and whatever, and I was just like
Yeah. It's
I
kind of
think
a
part of it,
risk either
yeah,
way, right?
it is. And I think for me, like I've also seen some people be really open-minded and that gives me hope. And when people aren't super open-minded and like welcoming, I'm just like, oh, come on, you can do so much better. Yeah.
Totally. Okay, next question. Ishita, do you think that the dentist like reflected later or ever got feedback or understood why you left and how inappropriate he was?
Um, I would like to say yes, but don't think so, unfortunately. Because when I had kind of talked to their receptionist and mentioned why, because it was the same office, so when I had to switch amongst the doctors, it was the same people I was talking to. And I had said, it's just generally the office, at least the staff that day, I just felt was really wasn't willing to be accommodating and had a lot of assumptions about my disability. And they just kind of said, "Oh, we're so sorry. I hope this doesn't happen again."
Mm,
So, you know, I would have loved to have, if they were willing to open the conversation about disability awareness, especially in the medical field, because there are a lot of teams and consultations that firms are doing to kind of enhance disability awareness and better treatment of people with disabilities in the medical field. So if they had been open to it, I would have been happy to kind of pass that information along. But I think, unfortunately, in a lot of medical spaces, it's very much just move on to the next person, move on to the next person kind of thing. And that's just the attitude a lot of the times, especially if they are a specialist and don't have a lot of time with the people they're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
So, unfortunately, I don't think that they did.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Okay, so this question is kind of to all of you. When you're with your friends and you encounter ableism, what do you want your friends to do? How can they be allies in this situation? Jill,
can I
let's
speak?
start.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, sure. Go ahead, Keisha.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm messing with the run of things.
No, it's totally fine.
But I would say like one thing that I see, like I've had some friends do, which I think is really great, is like just be like, well, for example, some people will look to your friends or your family who are sighted and be like, what do they want? Blah, 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 the classic thing.
Yeah.
And I think like one of the most beautiful things you can do as a sighted ally slash friend slash family is be just not answer and just revert to the person, the person whose scenario it is. So like the visually impaired person, and just be like, I don't know, ask them. Like
Yeah.
they are the person you're talking to, and you should be speaking to them as a human.
For sure. Yeah. What about you, Jill?
Yeah, very similar to Keisha. I've had some family or friends try and, jump in if there's been like, especially for me, most common kind of ableism or any kind of issue is most commonly to do with my dog,
Mm-hmm.
because people are scared of dogs or they don't think they're allowed in restaurants or Ubers or whatever, right? Um, so a lot, like I've had some family and friends instantly like start fighting back, but like a little aggressively. And I'm like, that is not gonna help the situation. You're gonna make it worse. You're getting worked up instantly, which trust me, I get. I'm very angry inside. But there's a very like diplomatic kind of way to go about those situations. So when like family and friends just jump in and like kind of start raging on them, it's like that's not gonna help. You're making it worse. Like stop. Um, but like I've had like a lot of friends and family and like even like my boyfriend, like our very first date we went on, I was taking Uber home after the date, and the Uber driver was trying to say like no to my dog. And like my I didn't know this till later, but like my boyfriend had never met like he's fully sighted and he had never met like a blind person before that I am aware of. So he's
Mm-hmm.
never run into this situation. So I just instantly like jump in and I'm polite and I'm diplomatic and like it's illegal to deny, it's in your policy, you accept service dogs, etc., etc. And the guy was like, the Uber driver was very gracious about that afterwards, except for he wanted me to put the dog in the trunk, which was not happening. I'm like, nope,
Wow.
it's gonna sit on the floor and it's good and it's quiet. And like my boyfriend, he texted me later, and he's like, I like, I was really surprised because he's like, I was gonna jump in, but like I didn't know if it was my place. Um, he's like, I may have given him like a bit of a dirty look, but I let you handle it, and you're more than capable of handling it. Like it's your situation, your dog. You know, like the rules and laws better than I did. Like he did at the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so when people just kind of like, I don't, I've had like, if my family and friends kind of just support me and stand beside me, like support me and stand by my side, and if they give them a look that might help, that's cool. Like I'll take it. But I like to be the one to, politely and as diplomatically as possible, situation warranted, kind of step like, explain my side of the situation and how it's gonna go, and
Mm-hmm.
not really give them a chance to like I'm not gonna go and say like, oh, like it's okay, like we can just do it this way. Like I'll be like, nope, this is how it's happening. Like I'm pretty firm but polite, I guess I would say. So when family
Yeah.
and friends just let me handle it, then I'm like, great, thank you. It's very appreciated because I have a voice and it's my situation and it's my life. So I want to be
Mm-hmm.
the one to speak up. So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else want to speak to this?
I can say like, okay, this is a little bit of a different situation, but like, because I have albinism, so like people come up to me like pretty often in public and be like either they'll just be like, "Do you have albinism?" Which depending on what mood I'm in and where I am and who they are. I sometimes don't mind answering, but sometimes people just come up and be like, I've had people a couple times be like, you have albinism, or like, you're albino, or like they won't even talk to me. Like, especially when I was younger, like people would like my dad was telling me this one time, like this dude like came up to us at a restaurant and started pointing me out to his children, like if like animal or whatever. And
Oh,
it's just like a lot of the time it's just really dehumanizing. Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
I may add just one more piece.
Sure.
I think another great way to be an ally is to be a safe space for us to be to debrief with about a really
Yeah.
frustrating or upsetting situation afterwards, because sometimes like I just need to be vulnerable. I just need to like be angry, or I need to cry, or I need to
Mm-hmm.
just say like, wow, that sucked. Like, why did
Mm-hmm.
they have to be like that? And just to be a safe space for us to do that sometimes is like really valuable.
That's
I
actually a
Mhm.
really
agree.
good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
I
really good
was
point.
I was just gonna say exactly what Keisha was gonna say to kind of check in with the person and like that was frustrating. Are you okay? And kind of
Yeah.
let that be open. But I also just want to quickly extend it to when we aren't there, we're not physically a part of that conversation, but a lot of ableist attitudes can be talked about or spread behind our backs. So in situations where my friends that come up to me said, "Oh, well, this person was saying this about blind people," and I'm like, I always say to them that if you are comfortable, because I do my best to educate the people around me and let them know facts and what kind of how it is realistically. And they see me living my life, and I'm like, you have the right to talk about what is real. And I don't mind them saying, actually, my friend is blind and I've seen this, this, and this, or I know this, this, and this. So like just generally, just even spreading, I think, information about blindness being a spectrum, or it's not called a stick, it's a cane. Simple things like that I found has just kind of made blindness awareness on blindness just a lot more seamless. And I just find it kind of opens up more conversations about if it's a friend of a friend and they're going to meet me, just to make things a bit easier when they actually are meeting me, or just kind of open up that space for discussion.
Awesome. Okay, we have another question. What do you think parents and teachers can do to teach sighted kids about visual impairment to reduce ableism in the next generation? Oh,
I
sorry,
guess.
to teach, hang on, teach sighted kids. What can, I'm reading. What do you think parents and teachers can do to teach sighted kids about visual impairments to reduce ableism in the next generation? Maybe that's what I said the first time. Anyways, go ahead, Keisha.
I guess just like take every opportunity you can to not to just include the per kid, and like um I think like especially for little kids or I guess even teenagers, like just having opportunities to mingle and like goof around and swap tales and be kids with blind kids, like instead of just like, I mean, there is definitely value to a blindness presentation in the classroom, etc., but there's also a lot of value to just being like facilitating a playful or welcoming moment where they get to just be kids together,
Mm-hmm.
and or teens together, and it's like instead of being like, oh, here's Keisha, she's blind, this is what blindness is, okay, move on, like it would be,
Yeah.
I think just because that can be a little bit intimidating sometimes. And so I think just making trying to find creative opportunities to let the kids be kids and mesh together, I think that's and just reminding the sighted kids like, you guys are all just people, and
Mm-hmm.
the blind kid in the scenario is not a hero. They're not less able than you. They're just experiencing life in a different way, and there's nothing bad about that.
Yeah. I,
Yeah, I was gonna add on to that, kind of similar to like kind of what Keisha was saying, like, if you come across someone with a disability in public or at school, like I find a lot of the time parents because there's certain stigmas around disability and stuff like that, that like parents are like, oh, it's blind, like that person's disabled, like you almost, it's almost like the parents subconsciously give them like a wider berth, or like,
Don't
you know,
forget how lucky you are.
yeah, pretty much. But even just like, avoid, it's almost like there's subconsciously like an avoidance
Yeah.
aspect to it. So like just, if you come across a blind person or disabled person in your every day, just like, oh, cool, look at it. Like they have a cool cane that helps them get around because they can't see. Like just making it, like just having it not be a big deal. Like teaching your kids that it's not a big deal and to not, you don't need to be
Mhm.
uncomfortable and awkward around someone with a disability.
Or like if the kid has a question,
Mm.
I feel like I'm especially alluding to elementary kids here, but like if kids have a question, say you're doing a blindness presentation or whatever, and the kids have a question, and they're like, oh, like how does Jill do this? Like always remember to be like, hey, why don't you ask Jill?
Yeah.
Like and they're a person too, and just like yeah, like why would I answer that? I don't know.
Yeah,
Mhm.
don't shush your kid. That's
Yeah.
rude. We'll talk about it later. No,
Yeah, like don't make
actually,
it scary.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm. I think like adults can really help guide children through that process. Like, I was on a bus once and I think a child asked their mom like, oh, why is she holding that? And then mom's like, I think she's visually impaired, but let's go ask her. And if she
Mhm.
wants to tell us, she will. I
Perfect.
think like
Yeah.
that was a really good
Beautiful.
interaction where the mom too did take the initiative because the child was quite young and they just kind of said, excuse me, I just had a quick question. And if you don't want to answer, that's okay. So giving them the option, not just kind of cornering them into it either, like, tell me this now because my child wants to know. I think really just treating it like they will tell us, let's ask. If they don't want to, that's okay. And also just gauging as you would for any other person. It's a funny equivalent, but like with celebrities, like if they look like they're doing something, maybe don't interrupt them. But otherwise, feel free to go and ask and be polite and make sure you're giving them the choice and just kind of have both people walk away from the interaction like it was a positive one.
But I do also really like what Ishida said there because also like have a little empathy in the streets, you know, if you see somebody and they look haggard after a day of work, maybe just like don't ask. Maybe just
Mhm.
let them be. You
Yeah.
know, like
Yeah.
it's like they're blind, they have a cane. Look at their face. Look at their posture. Do they look burnt out? Maybe you don't want to ask them right now. Like
Speaking on behalf of a friend, right, Keisha? Yeah.
speaking on behalf of
No.
myself.
We are coming to the final minute of this panel. So I just wanted to take an opportunity to thank you all for sharing your encounters with ableism with our listeners here. And hopefully you learned something. If you did, share with a friend. And you can also help us out by visiting our website. We have an upcoming fundraiser if you're local, October 26th. There's information on our website, blindbeginnings.ca. Listen to our podcast, Limitless, the Blind Beginnings podcast. Subscribe, share. And if you have any questions or comments or feedback for tonight, you can send an email to limitless@blindbeginnings.ca. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you again to our panelists, and happy Blindness Awareness Month.